Good morning, everybody. Welcome to Citizenship Part 2, Government and Elections. So on Classroom, you will have a note sheet for this video, so please fill this out as we are going through the notes today. We are going to have a quiz on U.S. government, citizenship, and elections, probably on Thursday of this week. So any notes that you have used and created for yourself can help you on this. So the first thing you're going to see on your note sheet for this week is a vocabulary review. So please go through your notes from last week and fill out all of these 8 terms in your own words, because these terms are going to be on our quiz later this week. So you'll see that our slideshow starts a little bit down further where it says, how does the U.S. government work? So pause the video, do the vocabulary review, and then you can keep going with the slides. Thank you. So here we go. U.S. government. So how does the U.S. government work? This is some review from last year, but the U.S. government is split up into 3 main branches. You have the legislative branch, or Congress, and they make laws and create the laws in Congress. The second branch is the executive branch, known as the president, and the president is in charge of enforcing the laws that Congress makes and carrying them out. The final branch is the judicial branch, or the Supreme Court and the courts, and they review the laws to make sure that they are constitutional or unconstitutional. Remember from last week, the Constitution is a document that explains the powers of each branch. The Constitution gives each branch what we call checks and balances, which make sure that they are even and one branch is not more powerful than the other. As we learned last week, the 10th Amendment to the Constitution also gives the 50 U.S. states rights to make laws about different topics that are not covered by the Constitution. The Bill of Rights also gives citizens their rights in this country. So here's a picture about the 3 branches of government. On the left, you had the legislative branch. The building symbolized here is the U.S. Capitol. And they're split into 2 parts. You have the House of Representatives on one side of the Capitol and the Senate on the other. In the center, you have the executive branch. The building symbolizing with them is the White House. The president is the most important person in the executive branch. The vice president is the second in command. The third branch is the Supreme Court, or the judicial branch. There is a picture of their building. And they are a 9-member group of justices that are served for life and decide whether laws are constitutional or not constitutional. The legislative branch makes new laws for our country. As I mentioned earlier, Congress is split into 2 parts. The House of Representatives is on one side of the Capitol building, and then literally on the other side of the building is the Senate. If you are elected to serve in the House of Representatives, you represent a part of your state, not the whole state. So as you can see on this map of Colorado, our state has 7 representatives, and they each represent a different part of the state. So as you can see, we are in La Plata County down here, part of this light blue area, which is called the 3rd District. And so there are 7 different districts in Colorado. Each member of the House who represents one district serves for 2 years, and then they have to be reelected every 2 years. You might be looking at this map and being like, well, this doesn't seem fair. Why is the 1st district so small and the 3rd district so big? Well, it is not by geographical size, it is by population. And so if you know where Denver is on a map, Denver is right here. And Denver is the most densely populated area of our state. And so each of these districts has almost exactly the same amount of people living in them. That is why the 1st, 6th, and 7th districts are so small, is because the people who live there are so packed in. And the 4th and the 3rd are so big because it's a much more rural farmland with lots of mountains, and so people are more spread out. So it's based on equal population, not equal geographic territory. The other part of Congress, the Senate, if you are elected as a senator, you serve for a much longer term. You serve for 6 years. And every single state in the whole country gets 2 senators. So we have two from our state, Cory Gardner and Michael Bennett, and Utah has two, Wyoming has two, Nebraska has two, Kansas has two. That is different from the House of Representatives, whereas a state with a higher population like California or Texas, they will have many more representatives in Congress. At the moment, the Democrats have a majority in the House of Representatives, so we say that they control the House. And Republicans have a majority in the Senate, so we say that they control the Senate. So at the moment, as you can see from this picture, there are 435 members of the House of Representatives. At the moment, you can see that more than half are made up by blue dots, and so that would be symbolizing the Democratic Party. And so the Democrats control the House of Representatives at the moment. On this picture, you can see there are 100 dots for all 100 senators, and there are more red dots than blue dots, so the Republicans control or have a majority in the Senate. So who represents us in Ignacio? At the moment, we have Representative Scott Tipton, who is a Republican, and he represents Colorado's 3rd District, which is that big area on the western half of Colorado that we saw on the previous slide. Scott Tipton is not running for re-election this fall, so we will have a new representative after the election. We'll talk more about that in a couple weeks, or later this week. In the middle, you have U.S. Senator Michael Bennett. He is a Democrat, and he represents the entire state of Colorado. He is not up for re-election this year, so he will still be our senator in 2021, regardless of what happens in the election. U.S. Senator Cory Gardner is up for re-election, and so he is running against former Governor John Hickenlooper, who's a Democrat, and so Cory Gardner may get re-elected, or Mr. Hickenlooper may be a new senator in 2021. Again, we will talk about these elections later this week. The executive branch, now on to the next branch, is run by the president. The president has the power to veto or sign laws written by Congress. So if Congress makes a law the president doesn't like, he can say no, or he can veto the law. The president also has other powers like issuing executive orders, which have the force of law. He can also control important parts of the government, like the military, State Department, or Department of Education. At the moment, Donald Trump is a Republican and is currently our president. He was sworn into office on January 20th, 2017. Who can run for president? The Constitution is the governing document of the United States, as we learned last week. In the Constitution, it lists 3 requirements for presidential candidates. Number 1, you have to be a natural-born citizen. So either you are born inside the United States boundaries or your parents were U.S. citizens. Number 2, you have to have lived in the United States for at least 14 years. And that's so that someone isn't born in this country and then moves to Canada, lives their whole life there, and then comes back and runs for president. They want the president to have lived here and experienced what it's like to be a citizen for a good part of their life. And lastly, be at least 35 years of age. So those are the only requirements for president. You can see there is no racial or gender requirements in there. It's just natural-born citizen, 14 years in the U.S., and at least 35 years of age. So any of you who are natural-born citizens could at age 35 run for president. So go for it. And the 22nd Amendment, or change to the Constitution, limits a president to serving 2 terms or 8 years in office. This happened after the man on this slide, Franklin Roosevelt, died after being elected 4 times to president, and the people in the country decided that we should limit that to only 2 terms or 8 years. So as I mentioned earlier in class, President Obama won an election in 2008. He won re-election in 2012. That means he served for 8 years. In 2016, he was not allowed to run for a 3rd term because he had reached the maximum number of years he could serve. The judicial branch, or the Supreme Court, is the 3rd branch of our government. There are 9 members of the Supreme Court. As you can see, here are their faces in this picture right here. Supreme Court has the power of what we call judicial review. This means they can review laws and executive orders to see if they are either constitutional, which means that they are good, or unconstitutional, which means they are voted out or bad. If a law is ruled unconstitutional, it means that it violates some part of the Constitution, and therefore it is no longer a law. A famous example of this is in 1954. The Supreme Court ruled that segregated schools were unconstitutional and that you could not segregate students by race in school. The president has the power to appoint new Supreme Court justices, and then Congress must approve them. Up here in the top left, you can see this guy right here. His name is Neil Gorsuch. He was appointed to the Supreme Court by President Trump, and he's actually from Colorado. So he was a judge in the state of Colorado, and now he is on the Supreme Court. He's one of the most recent justices to be appointed. Okay, that wraps up our notes for today. Please make sure that you finish the vocabulary review and the notes, and then we will talk about elections for the rest of the week. Thank you.